Hi, this is Casey from Mastin Labs, and welcome to another one of our photo editing deep dives. In these deep dives, we try to cover a new technique, a new way of looking at things. So if you, like me, are someone who enjoys editing almost as much as you enjoy shooting photos, then welcome home. In today's video, we're going to be talking about what happens with colors and why the three-step workflow matters so much. Now, the Mastin three-step workflow, if you're unfamiliar, is to apply a preset, adjust exposure, and correct for white balance. The concept of it is something that absolutely works with any of the presets that anybody makes, truly. But I want to talk about what is happening and why following these steps can make such a difference in your work, as well as make it so much easier for you to work through the edits of your photos. So let's go ahead. You might be a little confused by what's going on over on the right-hand side of my screen. So on the left-hand side, you'll see is just our Lightroom interface. I've hidden just where it's the presets are, so we get a little bit more room on our screen to see what's going on here. On the right-hand side is what is called a vector scope. And a vector scope is just a way to visualize color, luminance, and hue range. I use this tool some when it comes to our preset development, but the vector scope is just an easy way to visualize the colors that are happening within this and sort of their saturation. So the further out on this ring, the more saturated that they will be, and the further in, the less saturated they will be. So if I just go over to Lightroom, and if I take the saturation, you'll see as it completely disappears, it shrinks down into the center. And if I go the opposite, you'll see that those colors expand and go totally crazy. So let's talk about why the three-step workflow matters. Here you'll see on this bottom, this is just a representation of this photo. You can see I am tracking two different colors here. And it is just the color of these leaves and the color of this little blue area back here. Now, what I want you to see is as I am moving the exposure slider up, how those colors are changing. Here on the vector scope, you can see that there is sort of the yellow. This is what the yellow is believed to be in just a sRGB environment. And here is where the red colors lie. So you have these 6 colors and you can see how they translate. Now, if I'm just moving sort of the white balance back and forth, you can see how those things are getting pushed around. But what happens is, so again, let's take a look. We're gonna look at our sort of yellowy orange ginkgo leaf color here, which, fun fact, is one of my favorite trees in the whole world. I love this tree, especially when it turns into this color. It is just amazing. So as I push up my exposure, you can see that that color is changing. And not only is it changing in position as far as saturation, it is also changing in hue. So the relationship between red and yellow is changing as well. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pull up just a different way of looking at this. And here, I'm going to position this line. This is normally reserved for flesh tone accuracy. But here, I'm just going to place it on this dot so that we can see on what side this is pushing. So again, I'm going to go back to my exposure slider, and as I push it up, you can see it is now becoming more yellow. We are unlocking those colors. If I pull it down, you can see it is pushing more red. That the colors are changing. So similarly, this happens with the blue, although I think to a lesser extent with this particular image, but we'll go ahead and I will move this over to the that blue selection, and we'll do the same thing. So there you go. So yeah, blue is staying pretty on point. I am seeing a little bit of shift towards cyan and a little shift towards blue, just depending. So like the brighter I get, it looks like it's like blue, and then there, oh, it shifts a little bit into cyan. But for the most part, blue is staying pretty consistent. However, this orange is not. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and we'll take this off now that sort of you understand the point. So now let's talk about why this matters with the way that any presets work, ours or otherwise. And I'm going to go ahead and I'll just go into HSL. So I'm going to grab something that is going to affect her skin the most. And say I have something that is going to be, yeah, it's going to be, the oranges go further into red. Or if I'm looking to make the ginkgo trees to be a little more yellow, which they naturally are, I can push it the opposite way. There you go. That's probably more accurate to what the scene was. I could do that with the white balance, but for the sake of doing it, here's this. So every time that a preset that would have any of these sliders is applied, you're going to see the colors change. Skin tone is going to change. Essentially, when you change enough of the colors, like the white balance of the actual image is going to change. If you ever see any presets that have changes within the RGB curves. That also is, to a degree, changing some of that sort of internal white balance. So your starting point is going to be a little different. And that's, again, that's a characteristic that is inherent in film and that we use to replicate our preset. So we apply a preset and immediately say, this is changing this way. And this is the look that I want for the preset in general. So I've applied the look. Well, I know I need to change this color now. This is like after the fact, after I've applied the preset. So I'll go here, I'm going to adjust my exposure, and now I can adjust my white balance to find, okay, like that is looking a little more natural. Maybe, yeah, that's looking better. So there you go. So there's like a before and after when it comes to this not real, very not real preset. So now I'll reset our exposure. I'm going to reset just everything here. And let's say I did this in a different order. Let's say I adjust my white balance first. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead, maybe I'll cool that off. Really, I mean, the skin wasn't too bad from the starting point. I like the warmth that it gives, but I'll go ahead and I'll cool that off a little bit. I'm going to add just a little bit of green here. And yeah, okay, so her skin tone's looking good. I'm doing this in the reverse order. So now I'm adjusting my exposure. Again, this is in the reverse order. This would be if you were working it in the opposite way. So now that you apply your preset and the skin looks off. Now I'm not going to go into sort of what is happening with exposure. What I want to dial into is sort of the amount of work that you would have to go into when you are editing your photos and why we do it in the order we do. So here is, I've adjusted the color, I've adjusted the exposure, and then I apply the preset. Well, maybe now my preset is too bright after changing these colors. Okay, so now I have to go back into the exposure and I have to correct that. Now I'm looking at this and I think her skin tone is all wrong now. And again, this is after I've applied the preset. So, okay, now I'll go back into this and I'll go back and add a little bit of warmth to this. And I'm going to add some more magenta just to sort of get that skin tone back to looking more natural. Okay, so just to cover what a workflow looks like if you're not using the Mastin workflow, is that I have adjusted my exposure, I've adjusted my temperature twice, because I'm having to adjust it again after I apply a look to make sure that it's correct. Versus if I am just applying the look from the get-go. So here we'll go ahead and I'll just start from 0. And here's this, I don't know, yeah, that's so far. Anyway, here's this adjustment. I've applied the look. Now I know this needs to get brighter, and I can do that. All the settings from the preset have already been applied. So here I just need to worry about those 2 extra things. I don't have to go back. I'm not changing anything with the preset. I just have to go forward and make these 2 adjustments. Adjusting exposure. We know that adjusting the exposure is going to change to a degree some of the placement of this color selection here that we'll see on the vector scope. So again, as I push it up, here you can see it is moving a little bit, not as much as it was before, but there you go. And there's my exposure adjustment, and now I can correct my white balance. I can cool this off and push a little magenta in there. And I know that that feels more natural. So in the Mastin 3-step workflow, I'm only having to adjust my exposure and my white balance once because everything is set. I don't have to go in here, I don't have to fiddle with anything else, and I'm not having to do anything twice. Having to go back, kind of re-guess your work, it can really be a pain, and it can also lead to inconsistencies within your edit. So let's go ahead, I'm going to reset this just to sort of square one, and we'll do the same photo while I'm editing with a preset. So I'll go ahead in here, I'm going to go to our Cinema Everyday pack. This is like my favorite pack out of any of them currently. I'm going to apply a look. So there we go. So we've seen those colors change. Here is sort of the before, and actually I'll minimize that so we can get back to our normal selection. So here's with the look and after, and you can see some of these colors are changing. Apply the look. Now I'm adjusting my exposure, bringing that up and correcting my white balance. So those are the 3 steps. Now, if I were to take this same look, and this again works with any preset, whether it's ours or otherwise, and say I do my adjustments first. Well, for me, I'm like, okay, I know this needs to be brighter. I want to cool this off quite a bit, and I think it needs a little bit more green. So there you go. Now I've done my adjustments. Now we'll apply the look. Go back in here. Okay, Now I've applied the look, I have to go back. I have to go back and I have to add more. This isn't bright enough. I know I need to bring up my exposure a little bit more. And now I want to cool this off a little bit more. Actually, maybe I'll just add a little more magenta. There we go. And yeah, I am going to cool it off a little more. There. So there's my edit. Again, I've had to do those steps multiple times, and I still might have to fiddle with a little bit more. I'm not having to play with the look anymore, which is fine, but just still kind of messing around with the white balance, making sure that the exposure is correct. And there you go. Okay, so there's the before and after. That's doing it outside of that workflow. And with the workflow, it just makes it so easy to be able to apply a look, adjust exposure, and correct white balance. Simple as that. In any case, thank you so much for joining us. There is why the 3-step workflow matters, why we do it in the order that we do, and hopefully this gives you a little bit of insight as to why this workflow is so efficient and effective. If you haven't already, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We love hearing from you guys in the comments as well. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to us at support@mastinlabs.com or directly at m.me/mastinlabs. And be sure to join our Facebook community as well, where we are a group of over 50,000 very friendly photographers. No jerks allowed. It's just a nice place where you can ask questions, whether it be about editing, your business, or a new piece of gear. So until next time, have a great day and happy editing.